She did not scream. She did not cry. She did not threaten anyone or make a single dramatic speech. She stood perfectly still she did not scream. She did not cry. She did not threaten anyone or make a single dramatic speech.
Yes, I'm listening.
She stood
Everything is under
perfectly
control
still
here.
in the
We will be
center
there
of a
shortly.
company lobby, in front of her children, in front of 300 witnesses, and let another woman slap her across the face. And then she walked out, quietly, calmly, like someone who already knew exactly what was going to happen next. Because she did. While her husband Larry stood 30 feet away with his hands in his pockets and looked at nothing, Quinn Hartley had already built something he had never bothered to read. Something buried in a subsection of a document signed 18 years ago. Something that most people skip because it is not exciting enough to hold their attention. Quinn had read every word.
And that single clause in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 3, was about to dismantle everything Larry thought he owned, everything Ashley thought she was taking, and every assumption that had been made about the quiet woman who always stood half a step behind her husband and never argued back. They thought silence meant weakness. They had no idea it meant preparation. Stay with this story, because what Quinn does next is not what anyone in that lobby expected. And by the time this story is over, you will never look at a quiet person the same way again. Lesson line. The most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest one. Real power does not announce itself. It waits. It documents. And when the moment comes, it does not need to raise its voice at all. Center of a company lobby, in front of her children, in front of 300 witnesses, and let another woman slap her across the face. And then she walked out, quietly, calmly. Like someone who already knew exactly what was going to happen next. Because she did. While her husband Larry stood 30 feet away, with his hands in his pockets and looked at nothing, Quinn Hartley had already built something he had never bothered to read. Something buried in a subsection of a document signed 18 years ago. Something that most people
skip because it is not exciting enough to hold their attention. Quinn had read every word, and that single clause in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 3, was about to dismantle everything Larry thought he owned, everything Ashley thought she was taking, and every assumption that had been made about the quiet woman who always stood half a step behind her husband and never argued back. They thought silence meant weakness. They had no idea it meant preparation. Stay with this story, because what Quinn does next is not what anyone in that lobby expected.
And by the time this story is over, you will never look at a quiet person the same way again. Lesson line. The most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest one. Real power does not announce itself. It waits. It documents. And when the moment comes, it does not need to raise its voice at all.
The lobby of Hartley and Associates was decorated for Family Day. Balloons lined the reception desk in clusters of blue and gold, the company colors. A catered spread filled 2 long tables along the east wall, and the smell of warm food drifted through the ventilation system the way it only did on special occasions. Children's laughter echoed against the glass and steel of the atrium, bouncing upward toward the skylight 3 stories above. Parents and business casual stood in small clusters, drinks in hand, performing the particular relaxation of people who are at work but pretending, for one afternoon, that they are not. Everything looked exactly the way a celebration is supposed to look. Then a sound cut through it. Not a gunshot, not a scream. Something smaller than either of those things and more permanent. A slap. Quinn Hartley stood perfectly still in the center of the lobby. Her cheek burned. Her 8-year-old daughter Lily had gone completely silent beside her, one small hand reaching upward, finding her mother's wrist, holding on. Her 10-year-old son Connor stood 2 feet to her left, and he was not looking at his mother. He was looking across the lobby at his father, waiting for Larry Hartley to move, waiting for him to cross the 30 feet of polished concrete floor between himself and his family, waiting for him to say something, do something, be the person a father is supposed to be in a moment like this. Larry's hands stayed in his pockets. His eyes found the middle distance, that particular nowhere that people look when they have chosen, in real time, to be somewhere other than where they are. Ashley Crawford's hand returned to her side. Her expression shifted through several emotions in quick succession before settling on something that was trying very hard to look like composure. The room held its breath. Employees looked away. A few parents stepped back instinctively, creating distance between themselves and the moment, as though proximity might make them responsible for it. Someone near the catering table set down a plate very carefully, as though any sound might make things worse. Quinn did not raise her voice. She did not look at Larry. She did not return the gesture. She knelt, slowly and deliberately, and met Lily's eyes, then Connor's. Her voice, when she spoke, was the same voice she used for bedtime stories and homework help and the 1,000 ordinary moments that made up the texture of their days together. "We are leaving now," she said. "Hold my hand." She stood. She turned toward the exit. She walked at the pace of someone who had decided exactly where she was going and was not interested in being stopped. As she passed the check-in table near the door, a volunteer reached out instinctively and then pulled back, uncertain. Quinn acknowledged them with a single nod. Not gratitude, not performance, simply recognition that another human being was present and had witnessed something they did not know how to respond to. The glass doors closed behind her. In the parking lot, Quinn settled the children into the back seat of her car. She buckled Lily's seatbelt herself, the way she had done since Lily was an infant, the same practiced motion, the same small click of completion. She sat in the driver's seat, did not start the engine. She called Dr. Patricia Mercer. Patricia answered on the second ring. "She hit me," Quinn said, in the lobby, in front of Connor and Lily. Her voice did not shake. That was somehow the most heartbreaking part of the sentence. "Are you safe right now?" Patricia asked. "Yes." "Are the children okay?" "They are watching me to find out." A pause, long enough to be deliberate. "Then be okay," Patricia said. "Just for the next 10 minutes. That is all they need from you right now." 10 minutes. Quinn looked in the rearview mirror at her children. Connor had his arm around Lily's shoulders. Lily was watching her mother's face with the focused attention of a child who has learned that her mother's face tells the truth, even when words do not. Quinn started the engine. "Okay," she said. 10 minutes. She had been preparing for this moment for longer than anyone knew. The preparation had not looked like preparation. It had looked like patience. It had looked like silence. It had looked, to the people watching from the outside, like defeat. It was none of those things. But that part of the story begins much earlier. It begins 18 years ago in a small office in Hartford, Connecticut, with a whiteboard and a paralegal and a consent clause that most founders skip. Quinn Hartley did not skip it. She never skipped the boring parts. That was the whole point. 18 years earlier, Quinn Mercer was 24 years old and the most precise person in any room she entered. Not the loudest. Precision and volume are different skills, and Quinn had always understood which one lasted longer. She sat at a folding table in a rented office space in Hartford, with documents spread around her in an order that made sense only to her, which was fine. because she was the only one who needed to read them. The holding entity, the trust structure, the signature authority lines, the consent clauses buried in subsections that most people skipped because the subsections were not exciting, and most people were looking for the exciting parts. Quinn read every word. In the next room, Lawrence Hartley was charming their first investor over bad coffee and a slide deck Quinn had built the night before. Larry was 28, confident in the specific way of people who have always been told they are exceptional and have not yet encountered a situation that tested that belief. He had a voice that filled rooms. He had a laugh that made people want to be part of whatever he was laughing about. He was, genuinely, remarkable at the thing he was doing in that room. Quinn let him do it. She was good at letting people do what they were good at. A paralegal named Susan reviewed the documents alongside her. Susan was thorough and underpaid and had been doing this work long enough to know which founders read what they signed and which ones did not. She looked up at the consent clause in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 3. "You want this here?" she said. Most founders skip it. Quinn did not look up from the page she was reading. Most founders regret it later, she said. Susan initialed the page. Quinn signed where required. No ceremony, no hesitation. The way you sign something when you understand exactly what you are signing and have already decided it is correct. Outside, Larry laughed at something the investor said. The sound carried through the wall, warm and certain. Quinn capped her pen. The company was founded that day on two things: Larry's charm and Quinn's structure. For the next 18 years, everyone would see the charm. The structure, by design, remained invisible. That was also the whole point. The years that followed were, from the outside, a familiar American story. The company grew. Larry's title grew with it. His name appeared in industry newsletters and conference programs, and the kind of local business profiles that quote executives about vision and legacy and the future they are building. Quinn's name appeared nowhere. She attended meetings selectively, without introduction, contributing in ways that were easy to mistake for support rather than authorship. She allowed the misunderstanding to persist because correcting it would have required explanation, and explanation would have invited attention, and attention, in her experience, invited assumptions that were harder to work around than the anonymity she had chosen. At home, the marriage looked functional. More than functional, it looked successful. Larry told stories at dinner, big gestures and boardroom drama reenacted for the children, complete with character voices and dramatic pauses. Connor, age 10, rolled his eyes with the particular precision of a boy who has heard these stories before and is performing skepticism while secretly memorizing every detail. Lily, age 8, asked if Daddy won. Larry always said yes. Lily always believed him. Quinn cut food, poured water, listened, and then, the way she always did, she asked one precise question that identified the central flaw in Larry's strategy for the upcoming quarter. Larry stopped, processed, laughed. "You are so thorough," he said. He meant it as a compliment. She accepted it as one. Neither of them examined what it revealed about what he believed her thoroughness was for. Larry's mother, Margaret, arrived on Sunday evenings with casseroles and opinions in equal measure. She had always been warm to Quinn, genuinely warm, the kind of warmth that does not require maintenance because it is simply how a person is constructed. She sat at the kitchen table and told Connor embarrassing stories about his father's childhood and winked at Quinn when Larry protested and poured her own second glass of wine without waiting to be offered. Quinn had always liked Marge. The feeling was mutual. Those were the years before Ashley Crawford. Before Ashley, the marriage had been hollow, in the way that many long marriages become hollow, not through cruelty, but through accumulation. Missed dinners, blamed on work, canceled weekends, framed as sacrifice. A growing tendency in Larry to speak about the company as his vision, his risk, his legacy, his team, his decisions, words that erased, one small substitution at a time. The structure Quinn had built beneath everything he was claiming. She noticed each erasure, filed them away, said nothing. Silence for Quinn had never been avoidance. It was observation, and she was, above all else, an observer. She was observing very carefully. The evening she first saw Ashley Crawford walk into Larry's orbit at a Hospital Foundation fundraiser and ask him exactly the right questions, in exactly the right sequence, with exactly the right timing between the laugh and the withdrawal of the hand. Quinn stood across the room and watched and thought, she is not after love. Love is a side effect. She is after position. She set down her champagne glass, said nothing to anyone, filed it away. Ashley Crawford entered the Hartley household the way water enters old foundations. Not dramatically, not all at once. Through the small gaps, the overlooked cracks, the places where something that should have been solid had become, through years of casual maintenance, a little less reliable than anyone had noticed. She appeared in Larry's calendar first. Work dinner, Ashley C., strategy. Then again, same week. Then a third time the following week. Each entry, individually, unremarkable. As a pattern, unmistakable. She appeared at the house on a Tuesday evening. Larry mentioned it at 5:30. She was in the area. She was dropping off documents. It would take 10 minutes. She stayed for 40. She accepted the coffee Quinn offered, held the mug like she was testing the weight of it, and looked around the kitchen with the specific attention of someone taking inventory. She complimented the countertops, too enthusiastically. Quinn refilled her own coffee, said nothing. 3 weeks later, at a company event, Ashley took Quinn's usual chair at the table before Quinn arrived. When Quinn entered the room, Ashley registered her presence, made brief eye contact, and did not move. Larry, across the room, did not notice. The children noticed before either adult chose to acknowledge that there was something to notice. Connor, at the breakfast table on a Wednesday morning, not looking up from his cereal. Dad, why does Ashley always talk like she lives here? Larry, not looking up from his phone. She does not live here. Connor. I know, I said like. Quinn, behind her coffee cup, hid a smile. Carefully. Completely. The weeks continued. Ashley's presence expanded incrementally. Each step small enough to be explained away. Each step building on the last. She texted Larry outside work hours. She appeared at events she had not been invited to, positioning herself beside him as though the position were natural and established. She began speaking about company matters in the first-person plural. We are planning, we have decided, language that implied a partnership no one had formally established. Larry did not correct it. He seemed energized by it. Where Quinn's calm had once felt like steadiness, it had begun to feel, to Larry, like absence. Ashley's loud attention filled the space that Quinn's deliberate quiet had always occupied. He mistook volume for engagement. He had always been susceptible to that particular confusion. Ashley's behavior toward Quinn sharpened as her confidence in Larry's indifference grew. Compliments turned backhanded. Questions carried judgment beneath the surface. She interrupted Quinn in conversations, redirected Larry's attention with practiced ease, and treated Quinn's presence at her own events as a complication to be managed, rather than a right to be respected. Once, during a conversation about the children's school schedules, Ashley interrupted Quinn mid-sentence. Larry was looking at his phone. He did not notice. The children heard it. Connor's jaw tightened. He was 10 years old and already understood that what had just happened was not acceptable. He looked at his mother. Quinn met his eyes and shook her head slightly. Not now. Not now did not mean not ever. Quinn had always been careful about what she said in front of her children. More careful about what she allowed them to see. She was allowing them to see something very specific. She was allowing them to see that their mother, when treated with contempt, did not collapse, did not retaliate, did not explain herself or apologize for her presence or reshape herself to accommodate someone else's comfort. She simply continued to exist precisely and without apology in spaces that belonged to her. That lesson, she had decided, was worth more than anything she might have gained by reacting. Meanwhile, Quinn was building something, not loudly, not visibly. She saved emails that contained authority phrases Larry used without authorization. She archived calendar invites where Ashley appeared in decision-making roles she had never been formally given. She noted dates and locations and witnesses when boundaries were crossed in spaces that had cameras and records and institutional memory. She was not building a case. She was building clarity. She was ensuring that what she knew internally matched what could be proven externally. She had learned early that private confrontations dissolved into denial. Public behavior created records. She had chosen the record. Richard Calloway, her attorney, and the man who had helped her structure the company's founding documents 18 years ago, received periodic updates. Not frequent, not urgent. Richard was not a man who required urgency. He was a man who required precision, and Quinn was the most precise client he had ever worked with. He reviewed her materials without theatrics, asked clarifying questions, occasionally made dry observations that Quinn appreciated precisely because they were dry. At one early meeting, reviewing a series of emails in which Larry had made commitments outside his formal authority, Richard had said, "He is either very confident or very careless." Quinn. "Both," she had said. "He always has been." The confidence made the carelessness invisible. Richard had written something in his notes, nodded, moved on. That was why she trusted him. The invitation for Hartley and Associates Family Day had been worded carefully, a celebration of growth, of culture, of the company's commitment to balance. Spouses, partners, and children welcome. Quinn read it 3 times, not for tone, for language. She noted the venue, the company's main headquarters, public-facing, well-staffed, governed by policy and institutional oversight, full camera coverage throughout the common areas. She registered the significance without comment. On the morning of the event, she dressed simply. Navy, comfortable, nothing that asked for attention. She dressed the children with the same attention to comfort over presentation. She told them where they would be, what to expect, where she would be if they needed her. She did not warn them about tension. Children sensed instability long before adults named it. She trusted them to observe what unfolded. Before leaving, she checked her phone. Emails archived. Documents in order. Richard on standby. Everything in place. She locked the door behind her family and paused for one moment on the front step. Not out of hesitation, out of recognition. The day ahead would not require performance. It would require presence. She was very good at presence. The lobby was festive in the particular way that corporate celebrations are festive, bright enough to signal effort, warm enough to encourage participation, structured enough that nothing could get genuinely out of hand. Children moved between activity tables, Parents formed clusters. The catered food was, as Quinn had predicted, better in smell than in execution. Ashley was already positioned beside Larry near the lobby center when Quinn arrived. She had dressed for a different event entirely, something bolder and more declarative than an afternoon involving children suggested. But heads had turned, and she had allowed them to, and that was the intended effect. She moved through the space as though she owned it, directing volunteers, correcting a staff member's name tag placement, greeting people by name with the rehearsed familiarity of someone who had spent considerable time preparing for exactly this kind of visibility. Larry watched her, did not redirect her, smiled when someone made eye contact with him, the smile of a man who wants everyone to believe that everything is exactly as it should be. Quinn brought the children to the activity tables. She positioned herself where she could see them and be seen, not hidden, not central, present. The afternoon accumulated in a series of small, deliberate provocations. Ashley redirected a senior staff member mid-conversation with Quinn. "He is needed over there," she said, not looking at Quinn when she said it. Larry introduced Ashley to two board members. Name, title, warm handshake. He did not introduce Quinn. One board member glanced at Quinn with barely concealed confusion. Quinn smiled. The board member moved on. Ashley loudly referenced our plans for the regional expansion in front of a group of employees near the children's area. Connor heard it. His jaw tightened. Quinn noted everything: the setting, the witnesses, the pattern completing itself with the methodical certainty of a thing that has been building toward this point for a long time. Late in the afternoon, as people gathered near the lobby center for closing remarks, Ashley moved toward Quinn with intention. Her voice dropped to the register of a woman who wants to be heard by her target without creating a scene for the surrounding audience. She almost achieved it. "You should think about stepping back from these events," she said. "It is confusing for people. They do not know what role you are supposed to be playing anymore." Quinn looked at her. "I was invited," she said. "So was everyone. That does not mean everyone belongs here the same way." She stepped closer. Her voice did not drop further. "He has moved on, Quinn. The company has moved on. You are the only one still pretending otherwise. What happened next happened the way irreversible things happen in public spaces. Quickly, completely, with witnesses." Ashley's hand rose. The slap landed in the center of the lobby. The room stopped. Lily's hand found Quinn's wrist. Small fingers. Absolute grip. Connor looked at his father across 30 feet of polished floor. Larry's hands stayed in his pockets. Quinn knelt, met Lily's eyes, then Connor's. "We are leaving now," she said. "Hold my hand." She stood. She turned. She walked toward the exit at the pace of someone who has already decided everything that needs to be decided. She did not look back. Behind her, she heard the particular silence of a room that has witnessed something it does not yet know how to process. She heard, distantly, Larry attempt a laugh that landed nowhere. She heard a security officer begin moving. She heard, beneath all of it, the sound of a system beginning to do exactly what it was designed to do. She did not need to stay to watch it. She had already done the necessary work. What came next belonged to process. Quinn called Richard Calloway at 7:52 the following morning. She had slept 6 hours. She had made the children's lunches. She had driven them to school and walked Connor to his classroom door and carried Lily all the way to her classroom because Lily had asked to be carried, and Quinn had decided that this was, for today, the most important thing she could do. Then she had driven to a coffee shop, ordered something she did not drink, and called Richard. He listened without interrupting. This was one of the things she valued most about him. When she finished, he said, "Public location, company property, children present." Larry's inaction visible on every camera in that lobby. Ashley Crawford committed assault in a workplace during a company-sponsored event in front of witnesses ranging from employees to minor children. Tell me you had your phone in your pocket. Quinn. I had my phone in my pocket. Richard. Quinn, Hartley, you are without question my favorite client. Please do not tell the others. He began assembling the legal framework with the quiet confidence of a man who has been waiting for a specific set of conditions to align and recognizes them immediately when they do. The incident report from security, the camera footage, the witness statements from employees who had been present, the documentation Quinn had been collecting for months. A record, he told her, is only as strong as its foundation. Your foundation has been 18 years in the making. She already knew that. She was glad he knew it too. At home, she focused on consistency. Breakfast at the same time each morning. School runs on schedule. Homework at the kitchen table at 4:30. Dinner at 6. Bedtime routines unchanged. Structure, she had always believed, was a form of love, especially when everything else was in motion. Marge called on a Thursday evening. Quinn could hear, before Marge said a single word, the particular quality of her silence on the other end of the line, the held breath of a woman gathering herself. Then, she hit you, in the lobby, in front of my grandchildren. Quinn, Marge, I made that boy a casserole every Sunday for 30 years. I know. 30 years, Quinn. 1,560 casseroles, give or take holidays. And this is what he does. Marge, I need you to stay calm. I am calm. This is my calm voice. You have never heard my angry voice, because I have chosen, out of love for you and respect for your neighbors, to keep it in a box. But I want you to know, the box exists, and it is not small. Quinn laughed. She had not expected to laugh. The laugh surprised her, the way genuine things surprise you when you have been performing composure long enough to forget what it feels like when you do not have to. Marge, quietly, on the other end. There she is. Quinn. There she is. The following week, Quinn met with Patricia Mercer for their regular Thursday session. Patricia was the kind of therapist who did not fill silences unnecessarily, who asked questions that had already diagnosed the problem by the time she finished asking them, who had been Quinn's closest friend for 15 years and her therapist for 8 of those. Patricia had heard the account of the lobby already. She listened to the update, the legal proceedings beginning, Richard's framework, the children's adjustment, without commentary. Then she said, "You documented everything before it happened. Not reactively, before. Yes. You knew it was coming. I knew something was coming. I did not know the specific form it would take. But you were ready. I was ready for whatever form it took. That is different from predicting." Patricia wrote something in her notebook. "That distinction matters," she said. "Most people prepare for specific scenarios and are devastated when events take a different shape. You prepared for any scenario. That is a different kind of strength." Quinn considered this. "I just read the boring parts," she said. Patricia looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means the clause that protects you is always in the subsection everyone skips. In legal documents, in relationships, in institutions. The protection is always in the part that is not exciting enough to command attention. So you read it anyway. You read all of it." Patricia wrote that down too. That evening, Quinn sat with Connor after dinner while he worked on a history assignment about American founding documents. He read aloud from a paragraph about the checks and balances built into the original constitutional framework and then looked up. "Mom," he said, "did you know about the checks and balances before or after you started doing this stuff at work?" Quinn. "Before," she said. "Long before." Connor. "And that is why it is working." She looked at him for a moment. He was 10 years old doing homework at the kitchen table, and he had just identified the central premise of an 18-year strategy. "Yes," she said, "that is exactly why." Connor nodded and returned to his assignment. Quinn watched him for a moment, then went to make tea. The email arrived at 11:47 at night from an unknown number with a single image attached. Larry and Ashley, sitting at a table with a notary, documents spread between them, signatures being applied. The image was slightly blurry, taken from an angle, but the documents were visible enough to identify. They referenced the company's founding trust. Quinn sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. The bedroom was dark. The house was quiet. From down the hall, she could hear the small sounds of her children sleeping. She put the phone down on the nightstand, lay back, looked at the ceiling, thought. In the morning, she called Richard at 6:45. She was at his office at 7. Richard had obtained a copy of the documents through appropriate channels by the time she arrived. He reviewed them without speaking for 42 minutes. Quinn sat across from him. She had brought coffee for both of them. His had gone cold. He had not noticed. Finally, he set the papers down. "The amendment clause," he said. "Section 12, subsection B, Larry's team found it. It allows for modification of the trust structure under specific conditions." He met the conditions. "How specific?" Quinn said. "Specific enough that it required significant research to locate. This was not stumbled upon. Someone looked for it deliberately and found it because they knew what they were looking for." Quinn, Ashley, Richard, or someone Ashley hired. Someone. Either way, it was intentional. The amendment was real. It was legal. It gave Larry, on paper, significantly expanded authority over the company's operational structure. Quinn asked, "Can it be challenged?" Richard. "Yes, there are grounds, but it will take time. Months, possibly longer, if he contests aggressively. And during that period, Quinn, he has operational control, not ownership." Control. She looked out the window. The city below was doing what cities do at 7 in the morning, moving forward, indifferent, efficient, unbothered by the private catastrophes unfolding in the offices above it. "He knew," she said. "He knew the whole time what he was doing. While I was documenting the lobby incident, he was already 2 steps ahead. Richard. Or he was 2 steps behind and Ashley moved him forward. The distinction matters for the legal argument. Quinn. It does not matter to me right now. What matters is what we do next." Richard opened his hands. That was what he did when he was about to say something she would not like. "We begin with the challenge," he said. "We document the grounds. We prepare for a long process. And in the meantime, Ashley Crawford is strategic advisor of a company whose founding trust now appears, on its face, to grant the man who brought her in significantly more authority than it did before this amendment was filed." Quinn was quiet for a moment. Then, "Has anyone notified the board of the amendment's existence?" Richard. "Larry's team sent a notice yesterday afternoon." Quinn. "And the response?" Richard. "Cautious. No one has formally accepted or rejected it. They are in a wait and see posture." She picked up her coffee, drank it even though it had gone cold. Sometimes the routine of a thing was what mattered, not the thing itself. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Richard. "Everything you already have, and patience." Quinn. "I have both." 3 days later, Larry returned to the office with Ashley openly beside him for the first time. He introduced her to staff as strategic advisor. New business cards, New email signature. A staff member Quinn had worked alongside for 9 years sent her a photo of the new nameplate on the office door. No caption, just the image. Ashley Crawford, strategic advisor. Quinn's office, the one she had designed, furnished, and occupied for 11 years before she had stepped back to let the process work without the distraction of her presence. She looked at the photo for a long time. That evening, Lily found Quinn at the kitchen table, laptop closed, hands around a mug that had gone cold. "Mom," Lily said, "why are you quiet? I am thinking." "About what?" "Chess?" Lily pulled out the chair beside her and sat down with the decisiveness of an 8-year-old who has decided that her presence is required. "Connor says chess is about controlling the board." "Connor was paying attention," Quinn said. "Are you going to win?" Quinn looked at her daughter, at the complete and uncomplicated faith in that question. She pulled Lily close, did not answer. The silence was the most honest thing she had said all week. The week that followed was the week Quinn would later describe to Patricia simply as the week. And Patricia would understand exactly what she meant. It began on a Tuesday. Connor's school called at 2:15. He had not gotten into a fight. He had done something that required more parental navigation than a fight would have, which was that he had heard a classmate say that Ashley Crawford was basically going to be his stepmother, and he had reported this to his teacher with the full moral outrage of a 10-year-old who knows when something is wrong and believes adults are obligated to address it. The teacher called Quinn. Then, following the school's standard dual contact protocol for students with 2 listed guardians, also called Larry, Larry sent Ashley to school pickup. The school, growing uncomfortable, called Quinn back. Quinn arrived at 3:15. Ashley was in the pickup line, in Larry's car, window down, with the specific ease of someone who had decided that being here was reasonable and expected anyone who disagreed to prove otherwise. Quinn parked, got out, did not look at Ashley, did not acknowledge her presence in any form, not a glance, not a change in pace, not a single signal that she had registered the other woman's existence in this space. She collected Connor from his teacher, thanked the teacher by name, walked back to her car. Connor got in. The door closed. 3 blocks of silence. Connor: "I do not want her near my school, Mom." Quinn: "I know. Connor, can you fix it?" Quinn: "Yes," not a reassurance, not a maybe. A statement of fact, delivered with the same certainty she had once used to tell a paralegal that the consent clause mattered. Connor looked out the window. "Okay," he said, and meant it. The following morning, Wednesday, an email arrived from 2 board members. Quinn had known these men for 11 years. One of them had attended Lily's 5th birthday party. The other had once told her, in a hallway conversation after a board meeting, that the company would not exist without the foundation she had built. The email informed her that the board had voted to temporarily recognize the amended structure while the dispute underwent legal review. They framed it as procedural neutrality. Standard practice, nothing personal. Quinn read the email at the kitchen table. Lily was across from her eating cereal, drawing something in the condensation on her orange juice glass. Quinn closed the laptop, made Lily's lunch. Turkey and Swiss, crusts removed, apple slices in a separate container because Lily did not like her apple slices touching her sandwich. Drove Lily to school, walked her to the door, came home, sat at the kitchen table. 11 minutes passed. She opened the laptop and began drafting the fraud filing. Because what neither the board nor Larry's team nor Ashley Crawford had considered was Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 3. The condition on the amendment clause, the one that required Quinn's written consent, which she had never given, which meant the amendment was not valid, which meant it was not an oversight, which meant it was fraud. She had found it at 2:17 in the morning 2 nights earlier, at this same table, with reading glasses she did not like to acknowledge she needed, and coffee that had gone cold an hour before. She had read the clause 4 times, closed the document, gone to bed, slept the best 6 hours she had slept in 2 months. Now she wrote carefully, precisely, without emotion. She described what the clause said, what the amendment had done, what the discrepancy meant, and what it required. She sent the draft to Richard at 8:30. He called her at 8:47. "Quinn," he said. His voice was different from its usual calibrated neutrality, not unprofessional, just present in a way it did not always allow itself to be. "Yes," she said. "This is fraud," he said. "I know. This is not a civil dispute about governance interpretation. This is a fraudulent document filed with the board of a company. I know. Are you ready for what that means?" A pause, long enough to be genuine. "I have been ready for 18 years, she said. On Thursday, the third catastrophe arrived. Ashley gave an interview on the company's internal podcast. 22 minutes, casual in format, friendly in tone, the kind of content that circulates through 3,000 employees and feels unofficial enough that no one thinks to escalate it. She spoke about stepping into a leadership role during a period of transition. She referenced the founding vision as though she had been present for it, as though it were a story she had a right to tell. She used the words "we" and "our" in relation to the company's future with the easy confidence of a woman who did not believe anyone would challenge her on it. She did not mention Quinn Hartley once, not by name, not by implication, not by the gracious acknowledgement of those who came before that would have been, at minimum, accurate. The podcast went to 3,000 employees at 9 in the morning. By 11, Quinn's phone had received 14 messages. Careful, calibrated messages. Thinking of you. Just checking in. Hope everything is well. The language of people who want to say something and are not yet sure what saying it will cost them. Quinn listened to 4 minutes of the podcast. Then she forwarded the link to Richard with a single word. "Perfect," Richard responded in 3 minutes. "I was thinking exactly the same thing, because Ashley Crawford had just told 3,000 witnesses exactly what she believed she owned. And beliefs, unlike documents, could be used against you." Marge appeared at Quinn's door on a Saturday morning. She was carrying a manila envelope, which she presented with the directness of a woman who had spent the past 73 years deciding that indirect communication was inefficient and had adjusted accordingly. "Quinn," she said, "I have been collecting something. I collect voicemails. Lawrence knows this. He has always known this. I have approximately 47 voicemails from him going back to 2014 in which he references your company, your structure, and your work in terms that rather directly contradict the version of events he is currently presenting to the board." Quinn opened the envelope. Inside were printed transcripts, each one dated, each one labeled in Marge's handwriting alongside the printed text. Quinn's company had a good quarter, 2014. Quinn's structure is what keeps us stable, 2017. Quinn built this thing smarter than anyone realizes, 2019. 8 years of Larry accidentally telling the truth into his mother's voicemail. Quinn looked at the envelope for a long moment. "Marge, do not look at me like that. I am 73 years old. I have nothing but time, an excellent filing system, and a very specific memory for the things my son says when he believes no one consequential is listening." Quinn handed the envelope to Richard at their next meeting. Richard added it to the file without comment. Then quietly, "I want to send Marge flowers. Quinn, send her a casserole dish. She sacrificed her good one for a cause that did not deserve it." Richard made a note, which told Quinn he intended to follow through. The fraud filing moved through the appropriate channels with the quiet inevitability of something built correctly. Richard filed it on a Thursday morning. By afternoon, the board had received notification. By the following morning, 3 independent legal experts had reviewed the consent clause and the amendment and arrived at the same conclusion without conferring. The amendment required Quinn's written consent. Her written consent had not been obtained. The amendment was therefore invalid on its face. And because it had been filed with the board as though it were valid, the filing constituted fraud. The board convened an emergency session that afternoon. Richard called Quinn at 3:30. His voice carried something, not unprofessional, just present. The fraud filing was accepted, he said. The amendment has been voided. You are reinstated to original structure, full standing. And Ashley, access suspended, effective 2 o'clock this afternoon. Her badge has been deactivated. Quinn sat with this. She allowed herself 10 seconds to feel it. The satisfaction of a thing built correctly, doing exactly what it was designed to do. The particular relief of a structure holding. 10 seconds. Then, what is the catch? A pause, short but present. Larry is contesting the consent clause ruling. He is claiming verbal consent was given and has submitted a witness who he says can corroborate that claim. Quinn. Who? The pause this time was shorter. There was no good way to extend it. Richard. His mother. Marge's living room on a Sunday afternoon. The same lamp, same reading chair, same family photographs on the same shelf, in the same order they had occupied for 30 years. A room that had always felt, to Quinn, like evidence that some things do not change. Tea between them. Uneaten biscuits on a plate, the sound of the neighbor's lawnmower starting, and then, mercifully, stopping. Marge looked tired in a way Quinn had not seen before. Not the tired of age. The tired that comes from the inside, from something a person has been carrying that is heavier than they calculated when they agreed to carry it. He told me you had agreed, Marge said. Her voice was quiet and precise with the specific quality of words that have been chosen carefully and are being delivered as accurately as possible. He came to me 6 weeks ago. He said it was mutual, that you and he had discussed it, that the business separation was amicable, and this amendment was part of an agreed arrangement. And you believed him, Quinn said, not an accusation. An observation delivered in the same tone she used for everything. Steady, unhurried. He is my son, Marge said. Silence. The lamp hummed. Outside, a car passed slowly. Quinn, Marge said, I need you to hear this clearly. I have the voicemails. I gave them to you. I gave them to your attorney. I told Lawrence, when he came to me, that I would not lie for him, that I would not sign anything, say anything, or appear anywhere on his behalf in this matter. He filed the paperwork listing me as a character witness, not a legal witness, not someone whose signature appears on any document before I was able to formally refuse. A character witness creates narrative doubt in a contested proceeding. Quinn. It slows things down. Marge. Yes, he used you, Quinn said. Marge. Yes, he used his own mother. Marge looked at her hands. Yes, she said again. I am sorry, Quinn. I am deeply sorry. This was Quinn's lowest moment. Not because the legal complication was unsurmountable. Richard would address it. The voicemails would do what they had been collected to do. The consent clause was in writing, and no character witness testimony changed what written documents said. But because she understood, sitting in this room with this woman who had always been kind to her, that Larry had no floor. She had suspected it. She had prepared for it. She had not fully felt it until now. There was no line he would not approach, no relationship he would not instrumentalize when the thing he wanted was on the other side of it. He had used Ashley. He had used the amendment. He had used his mother. Quinn did not know if this was something he had always been or something he had become. She considered it for a moment and then let the question go. It did not matter. The result was the same. She reached across the table and placed her hand over Marge's. "You gave me the voicemails," she said. "You came to my door. You told me the truth today when you could have said nothing." Marge's eyes were bright. "Quinn, that is what I will remember." She drove home, put the children to bed, sat on the front steps afterward, in the particular dark of a suburb, at 9 in the evening. Connor came outside. He did not ask if he could sit. He sat. "Are we losing?" he said. "Quinn, not yet. What is the difference between not yet and no?" She looked at him. 10 years old, chess student. The boy who heard the word like when everyone else heard the literal statement. "One of them is a door," she said. "The other is a wall. We are still at a door." Connor thought about this with the seriousness it deserved. "Then we should probably walk through it," he said. Quinn put her arm around him, pulled him close. "Yeah," she said, "we should." They sat there for a while. The street stayed quiet. A neighbor's porch light came on. Down the block, someone's dog barked once and then settled. An ordinary night. She was grateful for it. The following week, the fraud hearing proceeded. Richard presented the founding correspondence, including emails in which Larry himself referenced the consent clause as Quinn's protection. He had written those words 18 years ago. He had protected her, then tried to erase her, using the same document. The board read the emails. The room went quiet, in the way rooms go quiet when something has moved beyond interpretation into plain and unavoidable fact. Larry's attorney asked for a recess. "Richard, on Quinn's behalf, I think we have everything we need to proceed." The room agreed. Ashley, meanwhile, had contacted 2 journalists with a story framing the dispute as a bitter divorce weaponizing corporate structure. One journalist called Richard for comment. His response, "Ms. Crawford is welcome to speak with the press about anything she chooses. We would simply note that any coverage will naturally involve reviewing the discovery record, including documentation of how her involvement in this company was authorized, compensated, and formally recognized. We look forward to the full picture being available. Have a lovely afternoon." Both journalists published nothing. The board convened for the final vote on a Thursday morning. Quinn was not in the building. She was on the sideline of a soccer field in suburban Connecticut, standing next to other parents with coffee cups and the particular Saturday morning energy of people who are happy to be outside and watching their children do something physical and uncomplicated. Connor's team was in the second quarter. The game was close. He was playing well, focused, and deliberate in a way that had developed over the past months. A kind of settled intensity she recognized because she saw it in her own reflection sometimes. Her phone was in her jacket pocket. At 10:47 in the morning, it buzzed. Richard's message. "Unanimous. Full reinstatement. Call when you can. No rush. No rush." Quinn read those 2 words twice. Then she put the phone back in her pocket. On the field, Connor intercepted a pass, redirected the ball with the inside of his left foot, and drove forward through a gap in the opposing team's formation. The sideline reacted. Quinn reacted with it, genuinely, completely, loudly in the way she had not been loud about anything in months. Connor ran past the sideline on a dead sprint. He glanced at her. Something in her face told him. Not details, not words, just the thing itself. He grinned, turned back to the game. The vote had been unanimous. Original ownership structure reinstated. The fraudulent amendment formally voided. Larry's executive authority suspended pending full review of every decision made during the contested period. Ashley Crawford's involvement in any matter related to Hartley and Associates terminated, permanently, with documentation. Ashley had attempted one last intervention, The journalists, the narrative about a bitter divorce weaponizing corporate structure. Richard's response had handled it in under 2 sentences, and now both journalists were publishing nothing, and Ashley Crawford's name was no longer circulating in any hallway or email thread or meeting agenda of the company she had believed, for approximately 8 months, was becoming hers. It had never been. Larry cleared his office on a Friday afternoon, a banker's box, a coat on one arm, the framed photos from the shelf, the ones that had once included Quinn in the early years, before they were gradually replaced with conference photographs and handshake images, and the documentation of a man who had confused visibility with permanence. He carried the box to the elevator, rode down to the lobby, past the spot near the center of the floor where a slap had happened 4 months ago and a room had stopped, and he had stood with his hands in his pockets and looked at nothing and chosen, in real time, to be absent from his own life. He sat in his car in the parking garage for a long time. Then he drove to Quinn Street and parked at the curb, not in the driveway, just at the curb, and called her. She answered. Larry, I want to say I am sorry, not for getting caught. I want to be clear about that. I am sorry for starting. I am sorry for the lobby. I am sorry for what I let happen and what I did not do when I should have. Quinn, I know. Larry, does it matter? That I know it was wrong. She considered this with the seriousness it deserved. She did not dismiss it. She did not validate it prematurely. It matters to Connor and Lily, she said. So yes, it matters. She ended the call. Went inside. Lily was at the kitchen table, drawing horses with purple crayon. Lily had always drawn horses purple. She maintained, when asked, that horses should be purple if they want to be, and the world's failure to produce purple horses was a failing of nature rather than of horses. Quinn had always found this position philosophically reasonable. She sat beside her daughter. Lily, not looking up. Was that Dad? Quinn? Yes. Lily. Is he okay? Quinn. He will be. It takes time. Lily nodded with the acceptance of an 8-year-old who has decided that this answer is complete. She colored for a moment. Then she held out the purple crayon. Your turn, she said. Quinn took the crayon, sat beside her daughter, colored quietly for a long time. 3 months passed. The company continued operating, quietly, consistently, with authority, flowing in the direction it had always been designed to flow, through channels that had always existed, recognized now by the people who should have recognized them earlier. Projects moved forward. Decisions followed clear lines. The culture shifted, not dramatically, not through mandate, but through the slow accumulation of accountability being treated as an operating principle rather than an aspiration. People spoke up earlier. Mistakes were addressed before they became incidents. Clarity, it turned out, was more efficient than charisma had ever been. Quinn attended 1 board meeting per month. She arrived on time. She listened. She asked 2 questions, always 2, always precise, always the questions that identified the assumption no one else had named. She signed what required her signature. She left when the meeting ended. People learned, quickly, to prepare more thoroughly. They learned that the quietest person in the room was sometimes doing the most essential work. They learned to read the boring parts. At least some of them did. Marge came back for Sunday dinner. She brought a new casserole. A recipe from a magazine, she said. Nothing special. She had just thought it might be nice. Everyone understood that she had made it specifically, carefully, as an act of repair offered the only way Marge knew how to offer repair, which was through food and the willingness to stay and wash the dishes after. She stayed. Connor beat Quinn at chess for the first time after dinner. He was gracious about it for exactly 4 seconds. Then he stood up from the chess table and performed a small, completely unself-conscious victory dance that made Lily laugh so hard she slid off her chair and continued laughing from the floor, which made Connor laugh harder, which made even Marge laugh, which was the sound of the evening settling into something that felt genuinely like normal. Quinn watched her children from across the room. She did not feel triumph. She had no interest in triumph. Triumph was the feeling of defeating something, and she had not been trying to defeat anyone. She had been trying to protect something. The distinction mattered. She felt what she had been working toward. Through 18 years of structure, and 6 months of documentation, and 4 months of process, and every quiet moment in between, she felt settled. Later that night, after the children were asleep and Marge had driven home and the kitchen was clean, Quinn sat on the front steps the way she had sat the night Connor asked her about doors and walls. The street was quiet. The neighborhood was the particular dark of a suburb at 9 o'clock. Streetlights and the occasional passing car and the sense of ordinary life conducting itself without drama in all directions. She thought about Patricia's words from a session earlier in the week. Patricia had said, "You did not win a war. You maintained a structure. That is a different thing, and most people never learn to value it because it does not look like winning from the outside. But from the inside, from the place where you actually live, it is the most important thing there is." Quinn had said, "I just read the boring parts." Patricia had smiled. "Yes," she said, "and you built something that outlasted everyone who did not." On the street below, a neighbor walked a dog. The dog stopped at a patch of grass and conducted the small investigation that dogs conduct at patches of grass. The neighbor waited patiently, ordinary life continuing. Quinn stayed on the steps a little longer, not reflecting, not reliving, not cataloging what had been gained or lost, just being present in the evening, in the particular piece of a house where her children were safe, and the structure she had built was holding, and the truth, having been stated plainly, had settled into place without resistance. She thought of Lily's purple horses, the firm conviction that things can be the way you believe they should be, regardless of whether the world has gotten around to confirming it. She thought of Connor's chess lessons and the way he had said, at 10 years old, sitting on these same steps, "Then we should probably walk through it." She thought of Richard's 2 words after the vote, "No rush." She had built something 18 years ago in a small office in Hartford, with a whiteboard and a paralegal and a consent clause in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 3. She had built it quietly. She had defended it quietly. She had let the documentation do what documentation was designed to do. And when the moment had required her to stand still in the center of a lobby with her daughter's hand in hers and her son watching her from 2 feet away, she had stood still. She had walked out, not in defeat, in completion. The record was built. The structure had held. The truth had required no announcement. It had simply been there, exactly where she had placed it, exactly when it was needed. She went inside, checked on the children. Lily was asleep with 3 horses, 2 stuffed and 1 drawn on a piece of paper she had taped to her pillow, all of them, predictably, purple. Quinn turned off the hall light. The house settled around her, quiet and steady. And that, after everything, was more than enough. It was everything. If you stayed with Quinn's story until the end, here is what she would want you to take with you. Know what you own, document what you build. Read the boring parts, especially the boring parts. Never mistake someone's silence for weakness. Never mistake your own silence for defeat. The world may call your patience losing. The people around you may call your restraint acceptance. The paperwork will call it preparation, And the paperwork in the end is the one that gets to decide. If this story resonated with you, tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. These quiet moments connect people across very different places, and we love knowing where you are. And if stories about real consequences, quiet strength, and the kind of justice that does not need an audience matter to you, consider subscribing. Some endings do not come with applause, but they last. This story was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team. If Quinn Hartley's story stayed with you, here is what we hope you carry forward. Know what you own. Protect what you build. Read every word of every document that matters to your life, especially the parts that are not exciting. And when the world mistakes your calm for weakness, let it. The paperwork will correct that misunderstanding at exactly the right moment. Quiet strength is not passive. It is the most disciplined form of power there is. If this story gave you something, even one moment that made you feel seen, or one idea that made you think differently, we would love to know. Drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. We read every single one. If someone in your life needs to hear a story about dignity, patience, and the kind of justice that does not need an audience, share this with them. They will thank you for it. And if stories like this one, stories built on real consequences, and quiet courage, and the truth that always surfaces eventually, if those stories matter to you, subscribe to this channel. Because Quinn's story is one of many, and the next one is already waiting for you. Some endings do not come with applause, but they last. Final closing line. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team, with the intention of bringing you stories that carry real meaning, real lessons, and the kind of truth that stays with you long after the story ends.